Good morning, this is International Master Adam Hunt again with my game of the day from round 6 of the British Chess Championships. It was a game played by Nicholas Pert against Katerina Toma, who at the time of this game was played had just beaten Keith Ark and was leading the British women's standings in the main section. There were a lot of standout games in this particular round, but this one I've chosen for the instructiveness of the use of the bishop pair in the middle game. So let's kick off. Nick was white and started with d4, and we had a Grunfeld, Fianchetto Grunfeld, which is all very normal. Basically here black chooses between d6 and d5. d6 takes it into a King's Indian, d5 is the Fianchetto Grunfeld. It's very theoretical. White normally chooses c4, and Katerina chooses the most principled approach, which is just to capture on c4. I believe you can also play c6 here if you want a more solid game, but she chose to take on c4. And Nick played knight a3, which is the standard way in this particular variation of winning the pawn back on c5 on c4. Obviously it cuts out the idea of b5, and bishop to e6 in this position would be interesting because it holds the pawn for the moment, but there are some variations, and I think this might be one of them, where white can play the move knight to g5, and after bishop to d5, blocking the bishop off, I think we play the move e4, driving that bishop away. Sometimes you can hit this with an intermezzo move h6, but here I'm not sure how good it is. h6, taking the bishop, taking the knight, and then maybe there's a couple of options for white. Maybe d6 is a nice move, unleashing the bishop on g2, and also still threatening to take on c4, take on g5, and obviously take on b7. I'm not 100% sure on the theory of that, but that looks like it was the sort of way that things might proceed. So actually in the game, Katerina chooses a solid, very solid continuation with bishop e6. The main theoretical move here is c3, basically giving white typical Grunfeld pawns on c3 and d4. And after bc, c5, something like this normally happens, where black is trying to stop white playing e4 and expanding in the centre, and white has this solid centre which is hard to crack. But as I say, Katerina chooses a different approach. Knight c6, knight takes c4, bishop e6. Now of course knight g5 isn't possible because the knight's hanging, so b3 and bishop d5. So again, in this Fianchetto Grunfeld, black achieves a kind of lockdown of the central light squares. And the only way often that white will be able to break that is by exchanging off the bishop on g2 for the bishop on d5. Nick can continue with bishop b2, which is a standard developing move, and a5 seizes a little bit of space on the queen side. One of black's ideas might be at some stage to play the move a4. Knight e3 to attack the bishop, bishop e4 running away. a3. I think another idea that sometimes white has, that's probably not very effective in this position, is getting this bishop out of the way so that this knight can move to attack this bishop. So perhaps bishop h3 is a possibility, although in order to attack the bishop now you probably have to go knight g5. I'm not sure, but it looks like a possible move to me. a3. I guess with the plan, if now a4, you might well consider b4. You could also, of course, take. And it also just takes away a square from the black knight. Queen c8, knight c4, rook d8, e3. So again, white establishes this stable centre. Black is really wanting to, if possible, to get the move e5 in. But at the moment that's not possible because the knights control it too well. And you don't really want to part with your bishop in order to do so. For example, if bishop takes f3, well, we could even just take it back with the queen, and now there's no pin down the d file, so e5 isn't possible. So I guess the problem with black's position here is it's quite hard to suggest an active plan for her. We've talked about maybe a4 already being a possibility, but she chose just bishop d5 to go back with the bishop. Rook c1. It's easier probably to find moves which improve white's position than black's. h6, queen e2, queen e6, rook fd1, and Katerina did indeed decide to play this a4 move, to which Nick responded with b4. Now, it's probably only here that black makes her first, perhaps, inaccuracy of the game. I'm not sure how big an inaccuracy it is. It just looks like maybe this is a slightly strange way for this knight to jump. I was wondering if it was coming in here, but then of course you're faced with a discovered attack from this knight. So after Nick's move knight ce5, of course the knight can't even jump to b5. So in the commentary room at the time I think we were expecting c6, but again it's both c6 and the move that was played in the game, rook ac8. Nick had a pretty good way of jumping again with that knight to create some threats. I think he should have played knight d3 here, because the idea of knight f4 and knight c5 is quite difficult one to stop. I can't really make too many suggestions. For example, if we try and temporarily pin that knight with bishop c4, I think we can just drop our queen away. Oops, sorry, not the knight, the queen. Queen e1, though showing that this might be a better move. And the knight jump is still on. Nick chose an idea that I actually thought of as well during the game, which was to play queen f1. Basically saying to black, I can see that you put your rook and your queen on the same diagonal, so bishop h3 is going to be a skewer. And that's going to force, and it did force black to play the move that she played in the game, which was g5. Nick now set about attacking that structure with h4, and black played queen f5 to guard the pawn. I think if it was me here I would be more tempted by g4, just to keep things closed up on that side of the board. I imagine white will probably play knight to d2 and try and expand eventually in the centre with e4. So we might have to, for example, take on g2, maybe play c6. And I would say probably white's slightly better here. For example, something like knight to c4 might be a good move, ready to jump into b6. Yeah, I like white still. Okay, she played queen f5, hg, hg, and then knight d2 again. So, as I mentioned earlier in the video, the only way to break this crackdown on the central squares from white's perspective is to trade this bishop for this one and then get ready to play e4. And I'm not sure that the way that Katerina played here is maybe the best. She played knight e4. Probably, again, she should have done what we suggested in the last line, which was to take on g2 and play c6. Although, again, I think knight to c4 suggests itself with the immediate threat of knight b6 winning a pawn. And a move like b5, although it guards the pawn, isn't desperately attractive. I think I would put my knight on a5 here. We can see that we're hammering down on the pawn on c6 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Excuse me. So this looks like it could be a big problem. Anyway, she played knight e4, knight e4, bishop e4, and now played the move f3. Nick played the move f3. And we can see what white is doing here. White is playing for e4. So, for example, what does black actually play? You can't play bishop d5, of course, because e4 wins a piece. Bishop to c6 is, I suppose, maybe better than that. I imagine we'd still play e4. Either e4 straight away, or maybe take the bishop off. There's other ideas actually as well in the pipeline. Another quite interesting move might be something like rook c5. In the game, bishop takes e5 was chosen. D takes e5. Also, f takes e4 was possible. Something like this. Or even something like this. But Nick's a very strong positional player, and I guess in this position he just is saying, well, I've got the bishop pair, you've got an offside knight on a7, you've got a weaker king, so these factors should all be telling in my favour. And after b6, bishop c6, I think we can say that the position is clearly better for white. e4 is a very natural move. Queen g6. I think I would prefer to put my queen on e6, but there's a tactical reason why that's no good. By the way, in this position, the move bishop h3, which looks strong, I don't think quite hits the mark, because we can play queen takes f3, threatening to checkmate white, so that would have to be taken. And then after bishop takes, taking the rook on c8 means we can take the piece on d1, probably with the bishop. And I guess this endgame is, well, it's not disastrous for white, but it's not what he wants from that situation. So e4, queen g6, queen e6 is no longer possible, and now Nick plays the very thematic move e6. It's a really nice move, perhaps the strongest move of the game so far. The point is, of course, that this bishop on b2 becomes unleashed. I would definitely here have played f6, just trying to keep that diagonal closed up. Queen takes e6 is still going to be met by bishop h3. Katerina accepted the pawn, and now rook comes up with another very strong move, rook to c5. Basically installing this rook on e5, which looks a little strange maybe on the surface, but the point is that the black king side is where the real problems lie now. We're thinking about something like bishop c1, and the pawn on g5 is under big pressure. So b6, rook e5, rook d6, bishop c1, as I mentioned. Perhaps here there was a stronger defence, but it looks very difficult to me. King f8, rook takes g5, queen h7, bishop f4, and now Nick just plays this part of the game very smoothly. Just not doing anything to allow any tricks, exchanging some pieces, just saying positionally I'm still just miles better. King e8 to try and run away, queen c1. Queen c1, what's the idea behind that move? Maybe just to move the bishop and bring the queen to the king side. It also, of course, threatens a pawn on c7, though I'm not sure we're going to take that. Bishop d7, bishop e5. And we can see here that this queen is going to cover some important dark squares, which the black queen would like to escape to. So after knight b5, rook g7, the queen must move again. Rook g8, king f7, rook g5, and now we'll see that the queen is coming to f4 with check, and that's going to be the end. Queen h7, queen f4 check. Black resigned, because after king e8, probably just rook to g7 will be played, and wherever that queen goes, it's going to be curtains. For example, queen h8 will just be met with queen f7, king e8, queen takes e7, checkmate. And there's nothing much more that black can do. So a very smooth positional game by white. if we see how that affects the standings in the tournament now, we've got, I'll show you the results of round 6. So, on board 1, Justin Tan drew with Michael Adams. David Howe joined Michael Adams in the lead. Stephen Gordon beat Simon Williams. Ravi Hari and Richard Pert was a draw. David Eggleston lost a long game to Richard Palliser. Nick's game we just saw. John Ems played a smooth, what looked like a smooth positional game against Adam Ashton. Daniel Fernandez looked like he played a very nice game against Richard Bates. And Jovanka Huska has leapfrogged Katarina Toma for the British women's standings by winning a nice game against William Claridge Hansen. What that means in terms of the standings is we can see Michael Adams and David Howell are first equal and will play today. Stephen Gordon, Justin Tan, Richard Palliser are half a point ahead, back behind, sorry. And then there's a chasing pack on 4 points. Pairings for today, big match is on board 1, Howell versus Adams, the 2 favourites for the tournament. Then we have Palliser Gordon, Ems Tan, and on board 4 we have the clash between Richard Pert and Nick Pert. That'll be very interesting to see how they approach that one. They often meet in the British Championships actually, and there's normally a good fight between them. So we'll see if there's a fight or whether that's a quick draw. And then on board 5 we have Simon Williams versus Jovanka Huska. Good friends, Gibraltar chess commentators together. So some really interesting pairings. The games are heating up, and I hope that you will be able to join me and Danny. We'll be commentating from 2:30 this afternoon on twitch.tv. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you for Game of the Day round 7 tomorrow.